On this week's episode, we're talking about the importance of Super Bowl commercials. Is the EA Star Wars Love Fest over? And who is the best pro wrestler in the world today? I'll try it one more time. Toilets flushing, wife talking to kids, all that good stuff in the background. I don't know if it picks up on the mic, but you always got to try this again. Here we go. On this week's episode, we're talking about the importance of Super Bowl commercials. Is the EA Star Wars Love Fest over? Is the EA Star Wars Love Fest over? And who is the best pro wrestler in the world today? All this and more as we reach our next stop, the pop culture cosmos. And we're back for another great episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. My name is Gerald Glansford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. And you know, if it's a Pop Culture Cosmos, you gotta have my main man here. He is the legend of Humanica Media, which you can catch all their great stuff today on humanicamedia.com, YouTube, Podbean, and Apple Podcasts. It's Josh Peterson. What's going on, my friend?
Not much, man. Just got back from a party. We were watching the World Series. It's just a great experience. You know,
that Stanley Cup there was really awesome, man.
Yes, Stanley Cup was great. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they took it home, and it's just a lot of fun.
Man, I thought the Daytona 500 was not for a couple weeks. I must have gotten that all wrong.
I know. You just got to love a good game of golf.
So does your dog. That's right. Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a great show indeed. I'll tell you what, we've got a lot of great stuff on plate for you today. We're going to be talking about, we know it's the Super Bowl and all the great commercials. We're going to be talking about some of the ones we liked, some of the ones we didn't like, and also some of the movie trailers that you got a great glimpse at during the big game. We're going to talk about why people love it and why it's so important for everybody to keep their eyes on it during the Super Bowl game. Plus, also as well, we've got Rob McCallum standing by in the Cosmic Crossfire. And I just want to tell everybody out there, again, we just wanted to share our congratulations to Rob McCallum on the birth of his baby daughter this past weekend. We are truly excited and happy to tell everyone out there that he is the father of a 6-pound, 11-ounce baby girl, and he is truly, truly happy indeed. But we will be having Cosmic Crossfires. We've taped a few so that he will actually be a part of the show for the next couple of weeks. So he's still going to be out there. He's not going to be able to work with us for a little bit, but we still have some back episodes of the Cosmic Crossfire still on tap. So we're going to be playing that over the next couple of weeks, including tonight. So we're looking forward to that. Plus also as well, Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. We're going to be talking who we think the best wrestler, male or female, in the world right now. So we're going to share our thoughts on that and a whole lot more. Plus also as well, is Thor the... I know I've, if you checked out my site, if you checked out my thoughts on the Marvel Cinematic Universe at popculturecosmos.wordpress.com, you know my disdain for Thor the Dark World. And later on tonight, we're going to be talking about, is Thor the Dark World even worse now than it was before? We're going to be sharing our thoughts on that and a whole lot more. But first, Josh, it was the Super Bowl this past weekend. It was a great game, of course. We enjoyed it thoroughly, but, the football game now is becoming second place to what everybody talks about, and that's all the great commercials and trailers that go on during the Super Bowl presentation. So I ask you, Josh, first off, why is it so important for all these companies, these manufacturers, these producers, these filmmakers, these entities that are out there in pop culture and also as well retail and products and all that? Why is it so important for these companies and these filmmakers to be able to show their wares during this big game?
Well, once upon a time, I would have told you it was because it was one of the most viewed sports events of the year. But I don't know how true that is now with the NFL's declining ratings. But
It's still by
is
far and
it?
away one of the largest watched viewing byproducts in the entire year. There's just really not many things that are even close.
Right. So it's just, what better time to advertise something? And it's funny because the Super Bowl commercials, they're not just commercials anymore. There's a lot of people like, you have wives who don't like football or dudes who don't like football, whatever. It's become this thing where people watch the Super Bowl specifically for the commercials and for the halftime show.
Because they spend a lot of money on it, and also they're almost like in some ways short films, correct, that expand out into their websites and all that. So some of them turn out even to 10-15 minute films, correct?
Yeah, you can watch extended versions. How much? It used to be like a spot on the Super Bowl cost like it's like two something ridiculous, $2 million or something like that. So
For a 30-second spot, but I believe it is much more than that.
yeah, so if you think about that, you're paying that much money to get just to have a spot, and then you look at the quality of some of these commercials, and you wonder what was the budget to create that. And so they are very high quality, well made commercials, and that's why I used to always love the Dorito commercials so much, was that they were made by average Joes were making these commercials, and Doritos were putting their commercials out in front of millions of people. But now now they're doing more of their own like corporate stuff. But that was a really cool thing with the Dorito commercials, was that you could have like your average filmmaker sign up for these contests and then get his stuff shown in front of millions of people. But yeah, I mean, some of the commercials are fantastic. I know, especially like the movie trailers. A lot of people are, only watch football at this time of year for the movie trailers. But what makes me sad is, I don't know if you've noticed this, a lot of the stuff that they're played during this year's Super Bowl, they've been playing for weeks before the commercial aired.
Or you can find them easily on social media. It was only really the trailers for some of the films that really could not be seen ahead of time in any great detail. And there were some surprises indeed, even for some of the TV viewing as well, with Hulu, Netflix, and also HBO as well, popping in as well and throwing their money around, just quite a bit, as far as if you get a chance to watch all the stuff that was going on during those commercials. I want to ask you, first off, it goes for me way back to when Ridley Scott himself, maker of the Blade Runner, the Gladiator, the Alien movies that we all know and love, he actually was one of the first to produce a high quality commercial for, amazingly enough, Apple, and the really introduction of the Macintosh that really started to catapult them into becoming a player within the computer realm. And it started with a Super Bowl ad that he directed. So you see the importance of what can happen with a quality commercial. You get the momentum off of it, but also works both ways. If you really have a turkey that doesn't really fly with consumers, how bad that can trend as well, especially in the social media marketplace.
Right, because people, and that's the downside too of watching commercials during the Super Bowl or airing something, is that if it's bad, there's so much that it's going to be compared to, that if it's bad or boring or whatever, people don't like it, or even like this least bit controversial, it's going to get buried in news articles the next day. It's going to be social media, blogs, whatever you name it. People are going to be talking about it. So it's a huge risk, and it's a huge reward, but it also has a lot of potential for negative fallout too.
So I ask you, Josh, name me one commercial that you really liked and one commercial that you really thought was just a waste of a lot of time and a lot of their money.
Well, all right. So I don't know. I didn't really like, Dodge usually makes good commercials. Like last year they had a pretty decent commercial, but this one with like the Vikings and they're dragging the Dodge Ram through the water, that didn't make any sense to me. It didn't really connect because I had to sit there and think about why they were doing that.
And also utilizing the words of the immortal Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not exactly the best matchup in the world as well.
Right, during a Viking commercial. Like if they would have said, quoted Ragnar Lothbrok or something, that would have been one thing. But yeah, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And as for one that stood out, I'm going to have to say the Peter Dinklage, Morgan Freeman commercial. But again, that's one that we were able to watch 2 or 3 days before it even aired on the Super Bowl.
That one was for a combination of Doritos and also Mountain Dew, which will probably have PepsiCo stock up a little bit come the rest of this week. So I will tell you this: my favorite among all the commercials were probably. I'm gonna probably say for me the Doritos one was really really good. I also kind of like the crock pot, especially with the correlation that the This Is Us episode with how Jack really perishes or plot twist it involved at least something from that was responsible for the house burning down and injuries sustained and whatnot, or death sustained. So I can't say, some of the people haven't seen the episode yet, so they don't know if Jack dies, how Jack dies in this type of house fire, whatnot, caused by the crock pot. But the fact that they went out of their way, that Milo Ventimiglia from This Is Us went to actually doing a crockpot commercial to support the crockpot community was kind of cool. And then also Amazon. I think Amazon, with all the guest voices in there, with Alexa being down, I thought that was pretty creative, and I thought that was a great idea, a novel idea for a company that really doesn't need a whole lot of help right now and has a lot of momentum. So those were my picks for really solid commercials. And for the bad ones, I want to say, actually, for me, the bad one's probably Chris Pratt's. I think they really he was really misused in his commercials for, I think, was Michelob Ultra, or was it? Yeah, I think it was Michelob Ultra. So I just was kind of disappointed at the way he was utilized within these framework of his commercials. And also, I don't know, man, are you really interested in Mango Diet Coke?
No, I had somebody today was trying to convince me to try a double IPA mango beer, and I just had a hard time even imagining something like that existing.
So yeah, those were some downers. I know there was also some promising ones as well, but
can we give a standing ovation to the Tide commercial with
oh yes, yes. Yeah, he was all over the place. And you know what? I thought that was really creative that they Tide brought back some of those well-known commercials from recent past, from Old Spice, also Mr. Clean, and a few others as well, and also the mock medication, prescription medication commercial. I thought that was pretty funny as well. I like the fact that they went ahead and thought outside of the box on that. When you're spending that kind of money, it's really a gamble to think outside of the box like that and either hit or misses. But I do think Tide actually really resonated with their audience as far as trying to go ahead and be outside the box by having all those reminders of the recent past from those commercials and being involved in them at this point in time was a really neat idea. But there was also some great movie trailers and also previews for stuff coming to streaming video as well. I want to ask you, Josh, this is our deal at Pop Culture Cosmos. When you and I see those commercials pop up, our eyes just like get in tune, our ears perk up, we stay in tune trying to check out every detail. So of the trailers that were shown for films that were out there, what were some of the ones that stood out to you the most that really have got you excited for the movies going forward?
So I know we've kind of been talking about the potential fallout for a Han Solo movie, and like that actually looked decent because it looks like it took that dark tone that Rogue One had, and I really want to return to a Star Wars of that world, not the Last Jedi or whatever, but like the Dark Empire days. Like that looks like it could be interesting. I'm not going to say it looks good, but it looks like it could be a return to form from the Last Jedi, which I still have a bad taste in my mouth from.
And I also want to say this. That was a teaser for the trailer that came out today. The day you're hearing this, Monday, just want to let everybody know the trailer has dropped for Solo. That was a teaser shown at the Super Bowl. If you want to see it and you haven't seen it yet, just check out our site on Facebook, Pop Culture Cosmos, and it pops right up for you right there. Check it on out. You're going to be probably pleasantly surprised at how good it looks, especially after all the problems and whatnot as far as the firing of the directors, bringing in Ron Howard. So definitely looking forward to seeing that now. And I'm glad I was proven wrong. I told, either was it you or Rob, that I thought the Super Bowl was the last beacon of hope for the movie coming out still during Memorial Day weekend. And it looks like they were just using that as a setup for the actual movie trailer to come out, on Monday, the day after. So it looks like that it is now going to be something that Disney is now hopefully getting behind as it ramps up towards the Memorial Day weekend and its opening premiere. But what are some of the other surprises that were out there? I know something that Netflix just recently got, which came just completely out of left corner for me, was really a surprise, but I'll let you, detail a little bit more about it because it's something that you were really interested in seeing, even when you thought that it was coming to the theaters.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the Cloverfield. We're talking about Cloverfield, the Cloverfield paradox, and I'm a fan.
Which was the God particle? Just want to let everybody know.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of the Cloverfield series, but I'm also not a fan. Like, I'm a fan of the way that they want to create this shared universe between different genres of film that are all connected somehow. I'm not a fan of how they kind of forced 10 Cloverfield Lane to be a Cloverfield movie. And I'm not a fan of how they just won't tell us what the crap happened after the original Cloverfield movie.
And then also, the Cloverfield paradox is going to talk about what happened,
how it started.
And I'm assuming that in a future Cloverfield format, whether it's film or whether it's through Netflix, that they're going to probably tell that end of the story coming up, I would assume, correct?
Yeah, that's the assumption. Because I don't know if you know this, but originally it was supposed to go to theaters, and Paramount turned it down, and then I think Fox also turned it down because it was too similar to Life, that movie with Ryan Reynolds in them that came out last year.
But it was still, up until very recently, set for a late March, I think, or a late spring release in theaters.
Yeah, so that's definitely a surprise. I had heard that they were shopping it around with Netflix. I thought that it was a separate Cloverfield property, though. So I'm curious to see now that this is coming out on Netflix, because they already have, allegedly, Cloverfield 4 is already like wrapped filming, and nobody really knows what it's about. So I'm curious to know, is this going to be released in theaters, or is this just going to be another gone to Netflix type thing?
This was at Cloverfield 4. I heard that same thing. And at the time, I've read 2 articles on it that said it was coming out in theaters later this year. So you're right. The same scenario can happen all over again. But if people want to check it out, the Cloverfield Paradox, they can actually check it out right now on Netflix because it was made available right after the Super Bowl. So they can check it out right now anytime they want if they have a Netflix subscription. So that's something a little bit different that was caught up left field. The Westworld season 2, got to see a lot of that. It looks like something I want to get back into. Also as well, Hulu with the J.J. Abrams and also Stephen King combination there for that series. I know you got a chance to check that out, and I heard the mention of Shawshank as far as the Shawshank Prison mentioned in that that commercial for that upcoming series on Hulu. Did you catch it as well?
Yeah, I caught the references in the newspapers and all that stuff. Are they are they connected, or is this just something? Because I know Stephen King kind of has his own shared universe. So is this all? Are they connected, or is this kind of something that they just
Well,
tied together?
I think it's something where he goes back. He was called back, or he goes back to Shawshank because he heard something from the Shawshank prison or something like that. So I'm assuming since Stephen King is directly involved in this production, along with J.J. Abrams and overseeing it, I have a feeling it is dealing somewhat with the Stephen King shared universe.
Yeah, that'd be cool. What would be even cooler is if they, because I know in even in some of the Dark Tower books there is a mention of a story about Shawshank, but yeah, that's cool. I hope that all the and it'd be awesome to see all the future Stephen King series on Hulu connect to each other. But also, let's not forget that once the paperwork's filed, Disney is going to own Hulu. So what's that going to mean for the Dark Tower properties and all that stuff? Oh, I mean, they're still over at Sony, but hey, Sony's CEO stepped down, so we don't know. They might be going up for sale too. We don't know. So
there has been rumors of that. There has been rumors of that after CEO Kaz Harai did step down. He did get replaced. Actually, I think, yeah, but he is moving into. He's still staying with Sony in a position.
He's moving to a supervisor role. But it's such a weird turn of events. So like everyone's predicting that maybe Sony's trying to sell off some of its assets to cover some of the debt. But I mean, Spider-Man and Venom, like Spider-Man did really well. Venom's predicted to do fairly well, and
PlayStation 4, even though it did not meet the same level of shipments and sales that it did in 2016, still 9 million during the last quarter is still not too shabby for a system, and it's still closing in on 75 million sold worldwide, and it could top out at close to, if not over, that 100 million mark by the time it's all over. So I don't know where. I mean, if people were worried about an issue of performance, I think Kaz Harai, and maybe we should discuss this on a future episode, of his imprint on the Sony corporation, because we also always talk about the leaders of Nintendo and how they've influenced as far as Nintendo's ups and downs over the past few years. But Sony's resurgence in many aspects shouldn't be forgotten, especially after the tough times they've had from both a video game and a movie picture standpoint. But that's maybe for another day. We'll talk about maybe on this or one of the Humanica Media podcasts. We'll probably have to talk about that later on down the line. But I was excited to see a lot of other trailers that were out there as well. Josh, there was some more delicious Infinity War footage that was there. Just brief, but it was there. Also as well, Jurassic Park. Also as well, Mission Impossible.
I gotta be honest, man. I'm not too excited about Jurassic Park.
Well, you know me. I've never been a huge fan of it. I've seen them all. Eventually, I see them when they get to the TV or video or whatnot. I usually don't see them in the theaters. I'm not a huge fan of the series. I think they're okay, but to me, it's just always like a slasher film. And I've told, Rob and I have gone back and forth on this because he's a huge fan of the series, but I'm not a big fan of it. But it is coming out, and it did 1.6 billion, I think, on the last go round. So you cannot argue with putting out another Jurassic Park. But Mission Impossible, seeing Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise duke it out was kind of interesting.
Did you see the legendary mustache?
Yes, the one indeed, the one in question. It was there in all of its glory, fighting off Tom Cruise's punches. So maybe that's an extra defense shield that he has and that he's working on. But also the Infinity War footage, man. What'd you think? I know it was all too brief, but did you like what you saw?
I did. It frustrated me though, because they showed this really cool stuff happening, and we didn't really get to see much of the context. We saw Spider-Man climbing up the machine. How did he get there? What is he doing up there?
But see, that's the thing. You complain when you have trailers that show too much, and now you're complaining because you have a trailer that you think showed too little. They just never can make you happy, man.
Well, if they would have made it like 45 seconds instead of, less than 30 seconds and kind of shown us a little bit more, like it was, so I didn't really even have time to process any of it before they jumped into the next scene. So maybe I just need to go by and watch the play-by-play, but
well, that's the next thing for Humanic Media, doing one of those trailer breakdowns where you slow it down frame by frame. And in this frame, you can actually see the arm of one of Spider-Man's greatest enemies, and maybe do that, something like that. Humanic Media breaks down movie trailers. How about that?
I dig. I like it. I'll add that to the slate of never-ending projects.
There you go. Exactly. But there were a lot of great pop culture references, pop culture themes, and just basically for anybody that's out there, whether you're a football fan or not, the Super Bowl seems to have more eyes on it than basically anything that's out there. And even with declining ratings and whatnot, there were still millions upon millions of viewers checking out the latest in pop culture, whether it be on the retail shelves, whether it be something you can order, whether it's Keanu Reeves flying around for Squarespace or what have you. There was just so many great things to see, and we're just glad that you got a chance to check everything out along with us. And definitely it proves why the Super Bowl is such a great event. And really, as far as American culture, just one of the things that as far as pop culture, just truly one of the great events indeed. What are your thoughts on the Super Bowl commercials and the Super Bowl trailers? Is there one or two that you really liked and one or two that you really didn't like as well? We want to know both the good and bad in your opinion. Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanic and Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. We've got an excellent show, like I said, lined up for you. We've got brand new daddy, Rob McCallum, standing by in the Cosmic Crossfire. He's going to be, again, touching on one of his great niche pop culture subjects right after the break. Later on, we're also going to have Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. You got to check out their great podcast. Indeed, it's just awesome. You got to check it out if you are a pro wrestling fan to get the latest insight into pro wrestling. He is going to be talking with me, and we're going to be sharing our thoughts on the best pro wrestler on the planet right now. And then later on as well, Josh and I are going to be talking about EA and Star Wars. Is that love fest still there? They signed a deal for 10 years. Is EA and Star Wars ready to break up already? We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. And then, sorry to say this, but fans of Thor out there, we're going to be touching on our latest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we continue to break that down with Thor the Dark World, and why for me it was very dark. But for Josh, it may still be a bright hope. We're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more on this week's episode. But first, it is our good friend. It is Elijah Harrison and Plasma Z. And this is Mango. And this is the Pop Culture Cosmos. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave it in there. I may not have enough time for Mango, but just in case I do, it's there. And we're back. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. My name is Gerald Glasser from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We want to thank you so much for sticking around with us. We truly, truly appreciate it. You want to make sure if you get a chance to check out our show on one of these great stations, if you're not already, on the Podcast Radio Network. We're on Monday nights, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Or also as well, Croc Radio, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. The Western Digital Radio Broadcasting Network. You want to check us out there on Tuesdays or Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Also as well, Good Talk Radio. Hey, we're on them as well for 2 hours on Sunday night, 9 to 11 Arizona time. We're also on an absolute ton of downloadable networks. If you want to download our podcast, hey, it's Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podbean, the ESO Network, the Tangibound Network, the Gunny Geek Network, and if you want, and while you're checking out the Gunny Geek Network, and while you're checking out us on the Gunny Geek Network, you can also check out the Just One More Fix show, where the crew are reunited to talk about whether historical accuracy matters or not in tabletop RPGs. And once again, check out their show, the Just One More Fix show, right on the Gunny Geek Network, which we are on as well, or one of the other dozen podcast networks that we're on as well. ACE, the ACE Podcast Network, Player.fm, and oh my gosh, the list goes on and on. But with Josh, he has his Humanica Media going strong and so many shows on all their formats. So Josh, what's going on with your great entity known as Humanica Media?
Funny you ask, Mr. Glassford. Let's see. Tomorrow you can see brand new episodes of Topicocalypse and What About This? And then I want to say Tuesday or Wednesday, I hope Inside Sports will have a breakdown of the Super Bowl going up for you. And I think that might be the last football-centered episode for a while. And then
well, because I keep on trying to get you involved in talking some NHL sometime soon.
Yes, I would absolutely love to. Hey, we'll make it happen, man. We'll make it happen. Hey, also, I don't know if you guys know, we haven't really announced this yet, but Gerald and I are going to be streaming us playing all of the Halos starting in March. So as soon as we get a date for that, we will let you guys know. And also, don't forget to watch or listen to Attack of the Humanicans. You know, if you're on the road and you haven't downloaded the podcast yet, you can check out the latest episodes of Super BS and all your favorite shows. Yeah, that's all we got for now.
That's on the Podcast Radio Network, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And don't forget the PCC Multiverse, our second show on Friday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network as well. So, Josh, a few years back, it seemed like only yesterday, when EA announced an agreement with Disney and Lucasfilm to do exclusive Star Wars video games for the next 10 years. It's been a few years now. It's going on, 4 or 5 about that right now, in that 4 or 5 range since they started development on the games. And what we've seen is 2 Battlefronts, a studio closure, a single-player entity that was canceled 3 years in, games from the Star Wars universe that they're developing maybe coming at the earliest 2020, maybe earlier. So I ask you, and not the least of which, Battlefront and Battlefront 2, for various reasons, both getting trashed by the media, by fans, and by gamers, with declining sales by a wide margin for Battlefield 2 to the tune of at least 3 to 4 million less than what the original Battlefront did 2 years ago. So I ask you, Josh, with all that into play, what are your thoughts now on the EA Star Wars merger? Is it time to just end it early and call it a day and have the Star Wars universe go into someone else's hands?
This is what EA Star Wars universe is, an endless hype train. That's all it is. And they get people stoked, and then they bash their hopes for, they get them stoked, and they bash their hopes for a good future game, and then they announce all this stuff, and then they don't pull through with it, and then the whole thing with the loot boxes, and now they're saying that since sales on Battlefront 2 are declining, they're going to be slowly reinserting the loot boxes. So we like to think that they're listening to what we're saying, but they're not, and they have just done. Don't get me wrong, Battlefront 2 and Battlefront 1, they were fun, sort of,
but also the loot box controversy has really made it hard for Battlefront 2 to gain any type of foothold. I know people during the holidays were taking the pictures of all the Battlefront 2s that were left on the shelves and all that bad publicity they were getting. So that really didn't help the sales of Battlefront 2, correct?
Right. So yeah, and I was saying that they I had read that they are actually going to be reinstating loot boxes because the sales of Battlefield 2 were not Battlefield, Battlefront 2 were not what they were hoping they would be, not what they were expecting them to be. So, they don't have any goodwill towards the fans, and like especially with a property like Star Wars, they're not doing themselves any favors. It's like they don't listen to the fans, and they're not doing the Star Wars brand any favors. So by the time someone else gets the game or gets the license, assuming EA doesn't rebid for them, it's going to leave a bad taste in gamers' mouths, and we're not going to want to pick any more games up in the future.
And that's totally a shame because there's been so many games in development that we've had hope for. Just before EA took over the series, there was that single player game that was being developed at Lucasfilm in-house. And then there's all that looked really, really darn good as far as I think was Star Wars 1313, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, the latest tragedy was the developer for Dead Space and the game that Uncharted one of the writers and creators and forces behind the Uncharted series, Amy Hennig, she was a part of. That got kicked to the can after 3 years of development because EA was not in love with the fact that it's a single player narrative. So that was truly a disappointing thing as well. So I don't know. I think it's time for EA and Star Wars to just have the divorce, separate. It's time to go ahead and wish each other well,
but
and all their endeavors, and just move on to different ventures for each of them.
Yeah, but on the off chance that Microsoft ends up acquiring EA, that could completely shift the paradox. I mean, that could literally change everything. So if EA stays down this road, it's going to be a dangerous one. But if Microsoft, with the Star Wars brand in the hands of Microsoft, that could be something. There are some possibilities there.
It could be, but I'm at this point in time, Microsoft was rumored to be interested in Valve, and right now, if I'm taking EA or Valve, I'm thinking Valve would probably be the better option at this point in time. But still, that being the case, I think EA and Star Wars, I think it's just time that they go their separate ways. They end it early. They call it a day, but they're not. They're going to finish off their contract at least and see if they can salvage it. But it's definitely disappointing the way EA has handled the Star Wars license since they got it. And for me, the 10-year deal between EA and Star Wars cannot end soon enough. What are your thoughts on the EA and Star Wars deal? Do you think it's been, as Lando Calrissian would say, this deal is getting worse all the time? Is it something like that, or is it something that you think can get better with time? Or have you been happy with the Battlefront games that have been coming out? And are you cool with the single player narrative that was in development being shut down, and also the closure of the studio behind Dead Space being closed as well? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, and Humanica Media on Facebook and Twitter as well. I don't think anybody was really happy to see the closure of that studio, and I'm sure not even many more gamer fans that are out there were very happy with the closure and canceling of that single player narrative and the Star Wars universe as well. So that could have been something really special, especially coming off the fact that Battlefront 2 actually had its opportunity to have a single player narrative in their game, and they did it. And unfortunately, it stunk. And by most accounts that were out there, people were really not happy with it. It's just a poor presentation overall. And unfortunately, that's part of the reason why maybe Battlefront 2 is not garnering the same amount of sales that even its predecessor did. So the future is not looking bright for the EA Star Wars universe at this point in time, but you never know. There's still more games on the horizon, so we will hopefully be able to report better news down the road. Coming up next, we've got Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. He's going to be sharing his thoughts, and I will as well, on who we think the best pro wrestler in the world is right now. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back to close out the show. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. My name is Gerald Glasser from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. Thanks again for sticking around the entire hour. We truly appreciate it. We want to thank and congratulate again Rob McCallum. He, obviously it was great for him being in the Cosmic Crossfire, but also as well, we congratulate him on his newborn baby girl. Just truly happy for the entire family and Tanya and everyone there in the family. There's just so happy to see this new point in his life for him, and I'm sure he's still on a high right now as we speak. And also as well, Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. Thank him. I want to thank him for sharing his thoughts as well on the best wrestler right now in the world. Josh, in our continuing series with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as we break down all the films leading up to Black Panther and the Infinity War, we're up to Thor the Dark World, my friend. And all I want to say is if people want to check out my total thoughts on Thor the Dark World, which actually have gotten worse since because of all the events leading, again, as we talked about with Thor in Thor Ragnarok, you want to check that out on popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. There's my article there that's pinned up there on the site. That is my guide to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Josh, you've had a different opinion over the years on Thor the Dark World. I think it still holds a special place in your heart. For me, it doesn't. It holds a special place somewhere else, but I won't say where. But in your opinion, what are your thoughts now when you think about Thor the Dark World?
I don't know. I still like it. We talked about this after Ragnarok, is that, Ragnarok really changed a lot of the Thor timeline and made a lot of the stuff that happened in the previous movies feel worthless. But I remember, going to see The Dark World and feeling like this was the first. Hold on one second, man. Yeah.
The dog's not liking his commentary, nor mine, although that seems to happen quite a bit. I can't blame the dog. I don't like Thor the Dark World either. But go ahead. Your thoughts on Thor the Dark World.
Sorry. It holds a special place to me. And it's not because it's necessarily good, but it's because it was the first time that I got to see Thor on the big screen actually portray the broody, sentimental, noble hero Thor that I read about in the comic books. And it's not, and I get your point of view. I get why you don't like it, but this is just it was cool to see that iteration. So each Thor movie has been a different evolution of the character. And it was cool to me. I like to see it. I'm not a fan of Natalie Portman. I did enjoy what's his name, Skarsgård. I enjoyed seeing his part on the big screen. It's just cool seeing the mythos, the stuff that you would only see in the comic books. They really dug deep into the comic books for that movie, and that was cool to see that they did the research, made sure it all matched up. It was sad to see what Thor's mom died, but and this is the thing, in the greater scheme of things, it doesn't really connect to the other Marvel films very well, with the exception of Thor Ragnarok, where they're making fun of it, and they had that scene with Matt Damon.
That's what I was going to say. That's the only relation and only relevance that Thor the Dark World has now, is when Matt Damon, Sam Neill, and who else was acting in that scene? I'll find that out. Go ahead. But yeah, they were acting in that scene in Thor Ragnarok, and they were actually acting to Anthony Hopkins, who is actually Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah. Yeah, so that, I mean, that's really the only thing that connects. Oh, and also the ether is, you know, obviously an Infinity Stone, but you know, as far as character development goes, the characters aren't really tied to each other. Like, what's his name? Selvig didn't come back for any of the Infinity War movies. We saw a moment between Loki and Thor, which was undone in Ragnarok, then reforged in the end of Ragnarok, and now is clearly undone in the trailers for Infinity War. Um, yeah, honestly, like, there's not a lot that I can say about this movie. I liked it for its place, for what it did as far as the mythos goes.
Luke Hemsworth, Luke, Chris's brother.
Oh, that's right. That's
Thor.
right. Yeah, yep. But no, it was. I mean, you know, it is what it is. I like it less now that I've seen Ragnarok, and they kind of threw all that mythology out the window. Not mythology, but backstory. But I still, I would rather watch The Dark World than Thor 1. You know, I know I'm going to regret asking this, but what are your thoughts?
Thor the Dark World for me is at near the bottom or at the bottom. I have to
Well,
check my latest.
Do you put it above or below Thor 1?
I put it below Thor 1. I really
Okay.
thought it was a dud. I really had, because you know, the one of the very few redeeming qualities of Thor was the brother to brother Shakespearean type drama that they created and bonded over between them, and you know, also Anthony Hopkins, no father, you know, that type deal. And it just seemed like it was still the continuance of that bickering within Thor the Dark World. So it seemed to get on my nerves a little bit more, maybe. But just, I didn't like Skarsgård. I didn't like Natalie Portman's role in it very much. She was just there for a paycheck, it seemed like. Obviously, she knew she was already on the way out, that she wanted to be on the way out. And I just feel bad for Marvel and Disney that they kept having to make excuses for her, until finally within one sentence or mentioned by two, I don't want to say extras, but by two unidentified young ladies just wanting to take a selfie, to make a mention about her character in Thor Ragnarok, and then him mentioning it maybe in two sentences himself and just trying to make a joke out of it. And just basically that love story, which was supposed to have been something I think more meaningful when they drew it up, unfortunately just kind of fizzled out, because I think her interest in the character faded real quickly. And I could see a lot of that in Thor the Dark World. But just to me, it just was not something I really enjoyed, even when they went more to Asgard and they showed the spaceship fighting scenes and whatnot. And even Loki's quote unquote death really didn't resonate, because we know he came alive. He was never really dead, and that he was playing a trick all along, being that he's the god of mischief. So it just really didn't connect with me, and all the logistics behind how Skarsgård's character was killed, the Dark Elf and whatnot, how he was eliminated, just really did not resonate with me. So that's why, to me, it's on the bottom shelf of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, you know, like I said, I get that. You know, my hope is that, assuming Thor lives through the events of Infinity War, it'd be cool to see them kind of give him something truer to his comic books. You know, I know Ragnarok was fun, it was a good ride and all that stuff, but it'd be cool to see. I don't know, kind of. I don't. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, give him something. Give him his due. Like, they gave Iron Man his due. They gave Captain America his due. But Thor's just been all over the place.
Well, I have a feeling that they want to continue, even though Chris Hemsworth said he was at the end of his contract. I have a feeling they want to keep his character continuing over the next few years. I just have that feeling.
Yeah, well, and also they had Taika Waititi had said that he would be on board to direct another Thor film, and if that's the case, it'd be a real waste to not put him back to work, you know? So, yeah, I mean, that's
that's true. I couldn't agree with you more on that. But to me, still, Thor: The Dark World remains a stain on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it is not the bottom of my picks, but it is very, very near it. And I think now that we've seen Thor Ragnarok, it holds even less relevance and less importance, just like Thor does, than the actual when it actually played. Because, like you said, it just wipes out pretty much a lot of what was ever important or relevant within that first two films.
Right, and that's like too. I will like the beginning and the second act of Thor Ragnarok. I'm it's gonna be one of those movies I know I'm gonna have a hard time watching that undoing go on while I'm trying to watch it on like Blu-ray or something.
I think I'll get through it. I think I'll get through it just fine.
Well, it's also brief anyways, so.
Oh, there you go. There you go. There you go, indeed. What are your thoughts out there on Thor the Dark World? Do you think it still holds any semblance of relevance outside of that acting scene in Thor Ragnarok, or do you think the actions in Thor Ragnarok totally make the movie, in my opinion, totally meaningless and otherwise a waste of time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Share us your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Twitter as well. On Facebook and Twitter as well. I will say again, Thor the Dark World for me was a lousy movie and a lousy experience, but it was made even worse and was really just like stepped on like it was a piece of gum or something, like somebody stepping on it, with Thor Ragnarok really just trying to rub it out of its existence. That was just really just putting insult to injury right there for you. But if you have different thoughts, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to go ahead and just share that on the show. Josh, been a great show, but any last thoughts on the way out?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention, we saw a Black Panther car commercial, but that was one trailer that was conspicuously absent. And I don't know, maybe it's because it's already hit theaters, maybe it's at an awkward time, but even just seeing that again, I think would have got people hyped about it. Though, from what I understand, ticket sales, they don't really need much more hype. But
that's true. That's true.
It's a fun trailer to watch. It's probably one of my favorite Marvel trailers I've seen so far.
It is, but it was kind of interesting to note that in the Super Bowl commercial for that did have the Black Panther in it was actually a Lexus commercial and not an Audi. So that may tell you about which car maker that the Marvel Universe will be driving from this point forward. And plus, before we head on out, I want to make mention of something really near and dear to my heart. And that is something that my good friend Josh Peterson wrote on popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. There's some very deep thoughts from Josh. If you want to check it out, it's going to be like an ongoing blog that he's going to share his thoughts on, what's going on in his life. If you want to get a chance, you want to check it out. It's very, very open-hearted. It's like almost like opening a book from the author himself. And to me, it was very meaningful, and I thought it was very deep. And I reached out to him, and he's here today with me, and everything's great because of it. Because this show can't run at all without him. It can run without me, that's for sure, but it can't certainly run without him for very long. So I truly am grateful to have him as my cohort in crime in this, and just if you want to check out his thoughts, what's going on, and hopefully it will touch a lot of people out there as well. You want to check it out, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. He's going to be adding some future entries in the future that hopefully will touch people's hearts out there, and hopefully will keep him as well in a very good place. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another day in paradise right here in the Pop Culture Cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.